Welcome back, you filthy exiles. So, I switched my Purifying Flame character out and did a little bit of respec work, which doesn't take a lot with this build because CI is pretty consistent across the board. And we're finally back to Incinerate Elementalist, which was pretty much the character I sort of wanted to play on League Start, but no, it turned out really well. So, where are we up to with this character? So, basically, we're just cranking through maps at the moment. We're at 113, what was it? 102 maps completed or 115. We've taken down Maven. We've just got to farm the currency to be able to do Uber Elder at this stage, and we'll have all 4 Void Stones. Now, as far as depth-wise with this as well, so far we're comfortably just pushing down in Delve at about 424, and we should be able to keep going until like 600 to 700 at this stage on this setup. Without any major upgrades, there are many major upgrades coming to this build. Now, beyond this point, a bit of the mechanical breakdown of how Incinerate works. So, obviously, you hold the channel and you channel up to 10 stacks, as you can see on the screen there. And then when you break, you release those stacks, and then, or if you run out of mana, like in my case, because I'm not proccing Mastermind Discord, you then release a wave which does a big burst of damage. So, you have a channeling amount of damage in your PoB, and then you have a release, which does like 5.3 mil of just like flat damage, and then channeling gets up to about 8 mil on this setup as it currently stands. Now this is with like all damage modifiers up, so if we're sitting in Sigils of Power, for actually it's closer to like 9.5 mil because I have Infusion off, but if we only like hit one Sigil of Power on, or no Sigils of Power for those who want to be haters, then we get 9 mil. Now we have Onslaught, and we'll go through the mechanics of this PoB. But, like, this isn't unrealistic. Time spent stationary, you're definitely going to be standing stationary for 5 seconds, and this synergizes with Nature's Patience. And we get to about 222,000 effective hit pool. Now, of course, we could turn block off. We're at 116,000, but that wouldn't be realistic because we actually do block because we have max block on here. Glancing Blows max block, which works with the Aegis Aurora, which we're running on this setup anyway. So that's basically how it works. Now, we'll just D&D that. Now, a couple of other things to bear in mind. You don't want to be necessarily stun immune on this build, and let me explain. So you actually get a big proc from 25% more spell damage if you've been stunned while casting recently. So you want to have a little bit of headroom to where you could be stunned, because with bigger bosses, for example, this build is designed to face tank things. So it's not designed to be a map blaster, speedy runner. It's designed to be just a huge Hank the Tank, like go in, blast stuff heads on sort of build, which is why it's designed for Delve. It's designed to tank Crystal Kings. And once we balance this out and we get things like Divine Shield and whatnot, it should become a hell of a lot stronger. And the other thing to look out for are, stats that, for example, like the implicit of physical damage converted to chaos damage, because it's chaos inoculation, it's immune to chaos damage. So I think we can convert anywhere up to like 25% if we min and max. But as it stands, it's pretty good. Now, cost-wise of the build, it's currently at somewhere like 30 div, and that's just farmed out of Delve. So if you're following any of my sort of guides or anything like that, unfortunately, Resonators are completely bricked this league, and that's thanks to the league mechanic with all flames of Sulfite. But beyond that point, you can do boss runs at 300 to 350, and things like Curiosities are selling for like 5 to 7 div on the average, with like 3.5 div for Crowns of the Tyrants, and All's Uprisings for Envies going anywhere from like 30 to 40 div, or Determination rolls for like 18 to 25 div, things like that. So it's not unachievable to farm the currency for this, and also Mage Bloods are like the 200 div mark for a bad Mage Blood, which is pretty good because that's cheaper than in any other standard league before the last league when it was completely inflated, again because of the league mechanic allowing for it. Now outside of that, like Anathema's now down in price of 50 Chaos. Aegis Aurora is like 35 Chaos because apparently it's not good enough for builds now, so nobody's running it because everyone's running Mana Stacker, despite CI is still one of the strongest tanky variants in the game. Relicesh is sort of down. It's down to 2.5. Makes me feel bad because I paid 6 for mine. And then everything else is just sort of crafted and or just bought like 3 div 1. Dragon's Fang, not sure how much this roll is, but it's like 2. Oh, no, like 2 div for whatever this variant is. And then, I do have a pretty crazy implicit corrupted chest, which goes anywhere up to like 12 div on the reasonable sort of scope, and then you wouldn't pay 50 div to one mirror. You'd be mad if you paid that sort of currency for that. Funnily enough, bottle fates have went up significantly this league, so yeah, it's at like 10 div to 12 div. I bought mine for I think like 8 div, something like that, before they got completely wild and out of control. But yeah, outside of that, it's not like the most expensive build. It's not going to be a mirror tier build. Maybe it might be a mirror tier by the time I'm done with it. But anyway, this is just update 1. So there's a lot of variation that can come. One of the big things is we don't have a thread of hope yet. So this is really limiting our nodes here. This isn't complete. And there's a bunch of other things. We haven't leveled this up. There's just a bunch of other things that we haven't done in the build that need to be done. Anyway, that being said, let's talk about the PoB, break it down, and go through the gearing. Then we'll go through the skill gems. Then we'll go through everything else. Now, the other mechanic that's currently not in this, which is sort of hamstringing it, is focus. As usual, I'd usually play a focus setup, and I'd usually get that on my gloves. The problem with the change to mouse button 1, and this is a reasonable criticism to make, is that, while this is great, there is no way to automate socketed in or built-in skills in certain items. I thought I could socket an automation gem into a focus set of gloves. Unfortunately, doesn't work, which means you have to automatically trigger, which means you have to manually trigger focus, which you would do on a boss anyway, but it's just another button that you unnecessarily need to push when, previously you used to just run around and it'd give you a huge speed boost. But outside of that, like, the build's still tanky, it still does a lot of damage. Yeah. Now, T17 maps, it's not at a level where it can take down T17 successfully yet. Like many builds, T17s just have ridiculous modifiers. So that's something that in the next upgrades, it should be able to start face tanking its way through T17s. Ubers, not at a level where it can do Ubers. You'd be mad to go and take Ubers with this build currently in its current state. It's just not upgraded enough. There's not enough investment into it. So don't ask me about Ubers. I've put that to bed now. Can't do Ubers yet. Can do everything beyond T16, everything else except Ubers and T17 right now. That's because it needs more investment. Anyway, let's get into the PoB section. Okay, so PoB setup. So let's go to the configurations. So we have Soul of the Brine King. We have Soul of Aberith. This deals with Burning Ground. Brine King deals with stuns. We are okay with getting stunned because it does proc my break on my Incinerate. But I also don't want to be stunned all the time because then it's just an absolute pain in the butt. Time spent stationary, 5 seconds. This synergizes with our Nature's Patience. So, we get Grasping Vines and increased damage. So we do, increase 1.4 mil damage and about 40,000 effective hit pool, which gets our defenses up. And then beyond that point, we also have, so we run Relicash, so we natively have these stats, but we don't need to keep them ticked on because that's just how Relicash works. Onslaught comes from my flask setup. So if we have a look at flasks, we have an Onslaught flask or a silver flask. And then configuration here, we have Arcane Surge because we're literally running an Arcane Surge gem. So we have Arcane Surge in the setup. And then flasks active, yes. Consecrated Ground, well, we have a Bottled Faith, so that's how we get that. Are we channeling? Yes, probably going to channel for longer than, 4 seconds, but up to you. Convergence, yes, if we're hitting a boss, we get Mad Lad AoE. So people will ask me, so we get Heart of Destruction, which gives us Convergence. People ask me, can you play this on the Inquisitor? The answer is absolutely you can. The problem with going Inquisitor, though, is you lose the 60% increased AoE that you get from Convergence, so you have to top that up by other means. I don't necessarily have a solution around that right now, because I haven't built this with an Inquisitor in mind, but you could do it. Now, have you cursed an enemy recently? Yes. 2 reasons why. We have Cast When Damaged and Feeble set up, and we're running Anathema. And Anathema means we're proccing an Arcanist brand, which is doing Flammability and Elemental Weakness. So, yeah, we got 3 curses in the build. And that's why this is ticked. Infusion's active. Now, we turn Sigils of Power on. It's going to give you, increased defenses, but because people will be like, that's bullshit, even though it's not, we're going to leave that at 0. And arguably, I could just leave it at 5, because why would you stand still and, channel for 10 stacks at all? You would just want to channel for, 5 stacks somehow, even though the skill caps out at 10, and you can take a lot of damage and have a reasonable amount of stun immunity too, or stun resistance. Anyway, I'm digressing. So beyond that point, we're burning enemies, we're igniting enemies, we're also shocking enemies, and the reason why we take shock, and people have asked, why would I take shock on a fire build? Well, why would you need Ignite on a build that doesn't proc Ignite? that already does ignites. So we take shock because shock is straight up flat damage. And flat damage is our deal here. It gives us 1 million versus 51,000. So that's definitely a better deal. And cold's irrelevant because we're not doing any cold damage. We could do that to slow enemies down, but I don't know why you would. And then we have enemies are covered in ash. And the reason we have that is due to our Infernal Cry setup with Call to Arms. Call to Arms is actually one of the biggest improvements in this build because it gives you major amounts of clear. So that's how that's procced. And then finally, enemies are on Consecrated Ground. Yes, because we've got a Bottled Faith. And boss, enemies are Guardian Pinnacle bosses. So we're not doing any of that, inflatory crap that people do in their POBs to make it look way better. And say, I have infinite effective hit pool. No, we just have Guardian Pinnacle boss damage. Anyway, that's it for the POB. Let's talk about the gearing. Okay, gearing-wise, helm. Pretty much implicit, best implicits to get, which is going to be your Eater of Worlds. Is going to be your physical damage taken as Chaos. I haven't yet figured out what my best implicit is going to be for Searing Exarch yet. Basically, a lot of energy shield, a lot of resistances. That's basically it for now. If you want to get mana reservation efficiency, you can hit it with a Essence of Loathing, and that's going to give you a chance to roll mana reservation efficiency, but that wouldn't be something I'd do until you get to Mage Blood territory. We're running Aegis Aurora. This is an uncorrupted version, just the best in Slocket shield. It's a CI build, so you need to run it. We have Replica Dragon's Fang with Anointed Charisma, and just keep in mind the 9% and the 8% attribute requirements and the 9% reservation efficiency is really important, but this is +3 to all level of Incinerate gems, which is how we get to level 28 Incinerate. Now, beyond this, we're running a Vivisect, and this has Strength and Dexterity roll on it. The reason why you need that is so you have enough Strength and Dexterity to run the build. We have Relicash Boots, no-brainer there. And we get around the movement speed by using Frostblink and Wintry Blast, so we don't need to worry about that nerf to Relicash Boots. Then for our chest, we're using a 4 blue, 2 red Incandescent Heart with a Corrupted Implicit for 2 socketed AoE gems. This gets us another 2 levels to our Incinerate gem. And then we're running Anathema. The reason why we run Anathema, we get up to 4 power charges, which means we can have 4 curses on enemies, and we're running 3, and it's just literally the best ring in the game. Now, wand-wise, I've got flat fire damage to spells, not so much good spell damage. Cast speed's really important on this build. Spell crit, +1 to fire spell skill gems, and crit multiplier. Now, arguably, you could craft this in the new crafting mechanic really easily, or something significantly better if you're focused enough to craft it. So have at. Maybe I'll do a video on that when I want to upgrade this too, so keep your eyes out for that. Now, my gloves. I haven't really done the implicits very well, but I do have inflict fire exposure on hit, even though we don't need that. So I'm still playing with that and leveling that up. But resistances and your energy shield are really important. If you can get one with focus roll, even better. But just bearing in mind, you're going to have to manually tap focus, which you're going to do when you're going to fight a boss anyway. And then belt resistances. We're also going to have the syndicate roll for regenerate 150 energy shield per second when a rare or unique enemy's around, and just straight up energy shield because it's a crystal belt anyway, so that gets our ES pool up significantly. Okay, gem setups. In the helm, we got Arcanus brand on a 4-link with Flammability, Assassin's Mark, and an Elemental Weakness. Then in our shield, we got Frostblink of Wintry Blast, which still works. It's fine. I did a video on it. Faster casting and Defiance Banner, which we're not using, so I've deactivated that in the POB before someone's like, this is a bait build. That's not true, so I have already addressed that for anyone who wants to throw those stones at me. Then at my in my wand, I've got Infernal Cry, Call to Arms, and Inspiration. In my main setup, Incinerate, Infused Channeling, Arcane Surge, Increased Critical Damage, Inspiration, and Empower. This is only level 2, so if I get level 4, I get to level 30, I get a big damage buff. So say for example, I did that here and just popped in 2 more levels, I go up to 11.3 mil, no sweat. That's before we have 4 stacks of Sigils of Power. So if we did that, yeah, like 11.8 mil. And it can go way higher than that too, because we're not optimized either. So yeah, that's basically how that works. I've got to have that at 0 for the haters. Okay, so yeah. In the gloves, we've got Zealotry, we've got Enlighten, which is only level 2 currently. We have Tempest Shield and we have Determination. And then in the boots, we have Molten Shell, Enfeeble, Cast and Damage Taken, and Sigil of Power. Okay, in the skill tree. So we're going to go across onto the right side of the skill tree for this one. So it's a little different to Lightning Tendies. And so we'll come up, we'll grab all these points up into Protocol Perfection, Mystic Bulwark. Make sure you take this note here, you get 10% increased damage instead of increased spell block, because we're already capped anyway. We come down and get Arcane Focus. We may eventually get Arcane Will. We grab Annihilation. We also want Instability because we run a Leap of Faith here as well. And we run Deep Thoughts. We come up and we want Heart of Flame. And we want the critical strikes do not inherently deal ignite or do not inherently ignite, 100% increased damage against enemies that are ignited. And because we don't have elemental focus in this setup, we always ignite enemies. Then we have Discipline of the Forbidden. Ideally, we want to have 3% increased damage per endurance, frenzy, and power charge. It's going to increase the damage pretty significantly. I'll show you exactly what will happen if we did that. So if we had another level to do that, we would get a 382,000 DPS or 374,000 DPS buff. Then we come down, we grab Unnatural Calm. We get 100% increased energy shield from equipped helmet. Then we grab Arcane Guarding. We grab 1% increased block attack damage, block to attack damage per 5% chance to block on the shield. Then we're going to get Zealot's Oath into Arcane Potency, down into Sovereignty, down into Faith and Steel, and we want to get 10% of physical damage from hits taken as Chaos. And then we go down, and this is how we get Glancing Blows initially before we get a Thread of Hope. But once we get a Thread of Hope, we get to free up these 5 points here, and then we can get Divine Shield and some other stats in here as well. So beyond that point, we come back over here, we're going to get Nimbleness, and then we want 25% more spell damage if you've been stunned while casting recently. We'll come up and grab Throat Seeker for crit multi. We want the cluster jewel set up here, or the jewel set up here with Chaos Inoculation and Influence. And then in our cluster jewel setups, we'll run, at this stage, Smoking Remains and Master of Fire, which gives all enemies in the vicinity exposure. We want Precise Focus and Rapid Infusion. This means when we're channeling, we channel faster and we can move a lot faster, which is why my mobility isn't too hamstrung. Then I've got a Corrupted Blood Immunity jewel, which is how I get Corrupted Blood Immunity. Another Vital Focus and Rapid Infusion, and a Nature's Patience or Natural Affinity small cluster. Then we come across and we have Sap Psyche, Arcane Adept, and Practice Caster. And right now I've got a Watcher's Eye with Energy Shield per enemy hit while affected by Discipline, and increased cast speed with Zealotry. Eventually we'll change this out. I got something in mind for that. And then beyond that point, that's basically it for the setup. Ascendancy-wise, we're going to go Shaper of Storms first, Master Mourner Discord, Heart of Destruction, and then Bastion of Elements. Okay, so I hope this gives you a bit of an idea of what I'm doing. This build is Delve-centric, so the goal is to get to like 1,000 depth Delve, which it should be able to achieve pretty easily. This isn't going to be like the best build in the world. It's not the fastest build in the world, and it's not the right playstyle for everybody. Some people like that zoom. I'm a big fan of just standing and, you know, punching on. It sort of feels like a spellcaster version of Bone Shatter almost. And the reason why I say that is it has stacks, and then on top of that, Aegis Aurora works the same as if you were taking trauma at the end of the day, except it's exterior damage instead of damaging yourself. At the end of the day, I just think this is a cool build. Does really well on bosses at this stage. I'm not really having any issues in the end game. It's a lot of fun. I'm able to farm with it. It can do other content. You can really gear it up into doing like simulacrums and stuff like that too. And if you played my Lightning Tendrils build, this build is what Lightning Tendrils from last league was based on. You could literally just convert this to Lightning Tendrils and replicate last league too and still have tons of damage. Anyway, if you like this video, don't forget to like and sub to the channel. Don't forget to follow the Twitch. Post up any questions in the comments below or join the Discord, and don't forget to follow the Twitter. And now that's all the socials I think I have that I'm supposed to mention here. Anyway, I'll see you guys next time and or on stream.